I'm Reverend Rose Vanden, and I'm one of the founders of the church. You know, it seemed like a good thing to do at the time. And so I'm very glad to be here serving this morning. And I'm going to start this wonderful service with an invocation. So if you would think along with me and welcome in these wonderful spirits that are here with us. Be with us today, Spirit, as we come together in this sacred space to share our love with each other. We ask for our guides, our angels, and our ancestors to gather close to us so that we may feel and know their presence, love, and support. We ask for the higher master teachers to grant us wisdom and insight, and we call you in using the prayer that the Master Jesus taught us to pray. Our Father, who art in heaven, hallowed be thy name. Thy kingdom come, thy will be done, on earth as it is in heaven. Give us this day our daily bread, and forgive us our trespasses, as we forgive those who trespass against us. And lead us not into temptation, but deliver us from evil. For thine is the kingdom, and the power, and the glory forever. Amen. Well, today we have a wonderful service all ready for you. I'm glad that you're here to join us. And we're going to sing another song, or we're going to hear another song played. I always say sing because I'm used to, never mind. You don't need to know where I've been for the last 20 years. We're going to listen to another song. It's called Really Nice Day, which sounds like a really nice song. So let's listen to that. Thanks, Charlie. Sounds like a good way to start.
Yeah.
Thanks, Charlie. So, yesterday I was asked to give an online presentation out at Camp Chesterfield, which is a spiritualist camp out in Indiana. For those of you who don't know, Camp Chesterfield has been around for over 100 years and was recently actually given a historical marker to put on the land there, because it is historically it is a wonderful place in the state of Indiana, and it is also recognizing the wonderful contributions of the women who were at the forefront of spiritualism when it first began back in the late 1840s, 50s, which is very cool that they're recognizing that as a state, that they have this wonderful place that is still in operation. But Camp Chesterfield is a metaphysical and spiritualist institution, and it's where I studied to learn what I sort of know about mediumship. And I say sort of because there's always something to know about mediumship and spiritualism. There's always new things to learn. But they asked me yesterday to give a little workshop. And the topic of the workshop was becoming the high priestess. And so I thought I would share some of those thoughts and insights that I shared in that workshop. When I'm talking about the high priestess, we used as a reference point and as an inspiration, the high priestess tarot card. And so if you're familiar with tarot, and you don't have to be, but if you are familiar with tarot, there is a card in the tarot called the High Priestess card. And here she is. I know she's really small today because I could not find my large tarot cards. They're somewhere in my basement, but I'm not sure exactly where they are. But this is the High Priestess. And if you know anything about tarot, tarot has been used for years, for centuries, decades. It's been used for a long time as a source of divination, as a source of guidance, but it's also a really great source of inspiration and a really great source for meditative practices, because each of the cards in the tarot really represents specific qualities, specific elements that happen to all of us in our lives, and specific ways of dealing with those things. Plus, there's a lot of spiritual mysteries that can be revealed in the tarot. I've been a student of tarot since I was 16. I'm 55 now. You do the math. But I will say that tarot has always been and still continues to be something that I study. I do tarot readings for people. I use tarot a lot in my own life for guidance and wisdom. But there is always something new to learn in tarot, because it is such a rich, deep symbolism. And I think there's so much for all of us to learn from that. So that was one of the reasons I wanted to present that at Camp Chesterfield, but also because I'm really fond of the High Priestess card. For several reasons, and I'm going to share some of those with you today. And I didn't even realize that I kind of dressed today like the High Priestess until a few minutes ago when I was looking at my notes and going, she's wearing blue and white. Oh, I'm wearing blue. Okay, well, that was interesting. Go Spirit. We were inspired, clearly, to embody the High Priestess, which is one of the things I'm going to talk about today. So if you're a gentleman sitting in the audience and you're thinking, oh my God, what is she? I'm not a priestess. I am not. You still have divine feminine qualities, right? As a gentleman, as a lady, we have all of those qualities within ourselves, in our whatever gender we identify with. So the idea of the High Priestess in tradition, in lots of esoteric traditions, but also in the tarot, is the idea of the embodiment of the divine feminine. And that is something that we all are embodying at different points throughout our days, at different points throughout our lives, either more or less. So I wanted to talk about her and why she's important. So in tarot, if you're not familiar with tarot is 78 cards. That's a lot of cards to memorize, so I don't recommend that you try to memorize the tarot. You work with the tarot until it becomes part of who you are, and you work in the meanings of the tarot as you're learning it. But tarot is divided into two sets of cards, the majors and the minors. The major cards are the ones that look like this, that have a nice little title at the bottom of them, like this one does. They're always numbered at the top up here. And so the major arcana in tarot talks to us about the life journey that we all take throughout our existence here on the planet Earth. And the life journey that we take, and the spiritual meanings and the spiritual challenges that we may confront as we're journeying through our life. So the High Priestess is actually the number 2 card. Now, you would think that would mean she was number 2. Actually, she's 3rd, if you count the Fool, who is the 0 card. And the Fool is the 0 card because he is the beginning of the life cycle. He's the beginning. He's the one that is open to possibilities. He's the childlike figure that is in tarot, that we all are, that we all begin as, and as we journey forward, we're discovering all these different aspects of ourselves. So the 2 that the High Priestess is a part of, that 2 energy really talks about the duality of nature, okay? And 2, the number 2, being that another representation of duality. So the black and the white, the male and the female, the dawn and the dusk, all of those kinds of things that we talk about as having an opposite. But what the 2 and the duality really focuses on, and what our lesson is in the 2, is the integration of those things. The integration of those things that brings us balance. So that's one of the big lessons that the High Priestess has for us, is the idea of balance. As an archetype being a symbolic representation of energy that can be perhaps recognized in lots of different cultures and in lots of different ways of thinking and of being. That archetype represents things like the contemplative arts, which are things like meditation and prayer, the skills that you would associate with a priest or a priestess, someone who leads a congregation, here I go, or someone who leads in their spirituality just from being who they are. And that's creating sacred space, creating groups of people, or helping to create groups of people that want to study and learn more. Those are some of the priestess skills that the High Priestess also embodies. She also embodies things like energy work and healing. So if you're a healer, the high priestess is a great archetypal energy to connect with. Anyone who's a healer understands that the energy that you're healing with is not coming from you, it's coming from the divine source, whatever that is that you call the higher power, God, goddess, whatever that is. The energy flows through you as the healer. So the high priestess energy, the high priestess archetype also embodies that idea of energy work and using energy, moving energy, manipulating energy in a way that is positive and helpful and healthy for other people and for herself. And the idea of creating sacred space is another big connection to the high priestess. A lot of times in ancient literature, or if you read any historical literature, historical fiction and those kinds of things, they talk about groups of priestesses, especially in like the Greek culture, the Roman cultures, the Celtic cultures. And these groups of priestesses were like what we would consider to be nuns these days, or sisters, sisterhood of women or female identifying people who would get together and share their spiritual path together and do things in a community. And that's one of the other things that the high priestess also represents, is that community vibe of people getting together and searching and seeking and looking for wisdom. She's the guardian of the mysteries, is one of the ways that she's described. And so she embodies spirituality as it needs to be experienced, because spirituality is an experience. It's not just a thought. It's not something that you study just intellectually. Spirituality is something that needs to be embodied. Spirituality is something that we embrace, and it becomes a part of who we are. And it's naturally a part of who we are, I believe. But when we find our spiritual path, or when we start on our spiritual journey, each of the steps we take forward is just another way for us to have an experience of spirituality. And a lot of times in these kinds of churches, I'm talking about spiritualist churches, or churches that are a little bit more broadly thinking and a little bit more progressive, what we're looking for in that church experience is a community of people who are going to support our own personal journey in spirituality, as well as so that we can support their experience as well. And we come together to do that together. And that's a really beautiful thing. So the individuality portion of spirituality is also very prevalent in the high priestess energy. She's part of a group, but she's also her own sovereign self, okay? And you are your own sovereign self. And what that means is that you are responsible in the way that you interact with the world. You're responsible for the way that you approach things, situations, and you're responsible for the energy that you bring to all of the situations, all of the events, all of the things that happen to you every day. That you are sovereign to yourself. And what that also means is that it's up to you to decide and to choose what kinds of energy you want to bring, what kinds of energy you want to hold for yourself and for others. One of the symbols of the high priestess is the chalice. And I'm sure you've all seen chalices, like the Holy Grail and those types of things. And the chalice is a symbol of of priestess energy, because the chalice is something that is an empty vessel. It's something that can be filled with whatever it is that it needs to be filled with. In most cases, it's liquid, in most churches or most uses of a chalice. But as a symbol, the chalice is an empty vessel that is ready to be filled with something. It's ready to be filled with an energy. And the idea that the high priestess or a priestess, or just us as a spiritual person, we are a vessel that is waiting to be filled possibly with the excitement of spirit, the excitement of being a spiritual person and sharing that with other people, being filled with divine energy, whatever, and however that divine energy itself manifests for us, and in our own gifts and talents that we have that we share with other people. So some of the key words that I always associate with the High Priestess when in meditative work, not always in divination work when I'm doing a reading for someone, but in meditative work and in reflection work, she really, some of her key words are slow down, be still, breathe, and feel. Because those are all contemplative things that we do for ourselves, or we can do for ourselves, that help us to center and to balance, which again, with that duality energy that we were talking about, the key is balance. So she's that representation of the idea of being still, being quiet, allowing the breath that we all have access to every day, every moment of every day. We can breathe and we can become still, and we can wait and expect to be receiving or receive an answer to a question, direction in our own life, guidance from spirit, from the divine, because that's already within us. All that we're doing when we do that is we're becoming still so that we can access that divine that's within us. So she reminds us of those things. She's associated with the element of air, so if you're an elemental person, or if you know anything about the elements, earth, air, fire, water, and spirit, the four basic elements. Air is associated with communication. It's also associated with our thoughts and the way that we think about things, our thought patterns. So in that association, she can be a way to sort of clear out stagnant thoughts, negative thoughts. The idea that we all have those moments when we don't feel good about ourselves, or we have a negative thought about something that's happening in our world or in our life. And just taking that moment to remember, I can be a High Priestess energy right now. I can breathe and be still, and I can let go of that negative thought. I can allow it to be released, and I can fill it with something that's different. I can fill it with something that's positive rather than negative. It's a great exercise, if you've never done it, to just observe your own thoughts for like an hour. Okay? And that might sound really strange, but if you just say, for the next hour, I'm going to just notice what I'm thinking, and then just go on about what you're doing. So maybe you're chopping vegetables or vacuuming or, watching TV even. But even just doing something like that, and when you have those thoughts, you'll be surprised at what kinds of things your brain is creating for you in your brain. And sometimes they're not great thoughts. They're not great things. And so being able to say, I don't want to think like that anymore. I'm going to be noticing what I'm thinking. And when I notice it, I'm going to say, I'm going to let that go. I'm going to cancel that thought, and I'm going to replace it with something else. That's a lot about what the High Priestess energy is about noticing in the stillness what is there and what could be there instead. So that's another thing to contemplate. So the art of stillness is really a surrender to the sacred. It's a surrender to the sacred energy that infuses the entire world, that is the manifestation of the divine. And it's something that we all have access to all the time, every day. We just have to make time or make it a point to be open to accessing it. It's also the power to be, it doesn't have to just be meditation. It can be the power of being in the moment, fully in the moment, in every moment. I know that sounds like I'm repeating things, but it's hard to be present all the time. And that's another challenge that I think we have as people who are interested in developing from a spiritual perspective is how present am I in my everyday life? How present am I being when I'm talking to someone? Am I just listening because I'm trying to think about what I'm going to say next? Or am I really listening to what that person is saying? Am I being present in that moment? Am I being present in the moment when I'm cleaning the floor, which is so much fun always, but am I being present in that moment? Maybe when I'm present in that moment, cleaning the floor becomes a meditative act. It becomes a sacred act because I'm present. I'm paying attention to what's going on. I'm being here now. And that's one of the lessons that the High Priestess helps us to understand, is that there is no past, there is no future, really. It's all this moment. This is what we have. And so being present in this moment is a very sacred act. One of the things that the High Priestess reminds us of is the idea of bringing sacred to the everyday. Because as a priestess, we embody the divine energy. We embody that just through ourselves, just through the actions of being our authentic self and embodying that for others and being a sacred presence just by being. And when we are sacred presences, when we acknowledge that for ourselves, then we give permission to other people to be sacred as well. And we remind them that they're sacred. And it's not necessarily about going up to someone and saying, "Oh, Charlie, you're sacred." Oh, it's not about that. It's about being ourselves authentically, going into our heart space where the divine resides, and embodying that divine energy of kindness and wisdom and love, and just being that. And when people see that, or when they encounter that in their life, they may stop and think, "Oh, I could be that too. I could be better than I'm being." And it's not about better or worse on a scale. That's not what I'm talking about. But it's about becoming a better person, becoming the ideal of the divine. And we always are working on that. That's not something that we're going to necessarily achieve. But our challenge is to attempt it. And how much can we attempt it? How often can we attempt that? How much of that can become a part of our lives? And so that's another thing, that the art of stillness, that the High Priestess energy, that being a chalice and holding that sacred energy for others, that's another part of this idea of the archetype of the High Priestess. How can you bring the divine wherever you go? That's a great question. And it's a great thing to think about. And it might be something to journal about, or to take with you into your own meditation time or into your own prayer time. How can I bring the divine everywhere I go? And it doesn't mean you're a perfect person. It doesn't mean that you're never going to make a mistake, that you're never going to be impatient with someone else, or you're going to have emotions that are not the highest and the best ones, and all of those things. That's okay, because if you're setting the intention that for the most part, for most of the time, it is my intention to be a divine presence for others, to be the best divine presence that I can be, then that's all you need to do, because you've set the intention and the energy will follow that. So that question might be one to think about, because that question leads to the idea of, and the question of, how am I creating beauty in the world? How am I creating a better world? Beauty being not necessarily just how we, the exterior appearance of something, but beauty being the feeling that other people have when they're around us. Beauty being the energy that I bring to the job that I do. All of those things are connected, and they're all connected to the divine energy. And so the High Priestess reminds us on an individual basis that we can be that divine energy. We can. And if we go into stillness, if we drop into our heart space, then we're going to find what we need in order to go forward. So that's one of the things we're going to do right now. We're going to do a little meditation in order to access that. So if you would just get comfortable in your chair for a moment, and I would invite you to close your eyes so that you can, when we close our eyes, we shut out the exterior stimuli that's around us, and we go within into what is within us, as above, so below, as within, so without. So I would invite you to take a breath and let it out. And continue to take breaths in and out at your own pace. What feels comfortable to you, knowing that as you breathe in, you are breathing in light, positive energy, relaxing energy, stillness. And as you're breathing out, you're letting go. You're letting go for the moment, letting go of everything that doesn't serve this moment of stillness. Letting go of thoughts, worries, fears, just letting them go. And allowing yourself to be in this moment in time. There's nowhere else that you need to be. There's nothing else that you need to be doing. Just breathing in, breathing out. And allowing yourself to be still. I'd invite you to take your attention down to your feet where they rest on the floor. And as you take your attention down to your feet, imagine that at the bottoms of your feet there are roots, like a tree's roots, that grow out of the bottom of your feet. And those roots grow and spread out into the earth that's below your feet, down through the floors of the building, down through the concrete foundation, down into the earth. And those roots anchor you into that strong, steady earth energy. And in anchoring in this energy, you can breathe that strong, steady energy up through your roots, up into your body. Allowing that healing energy of the earth to anchor you, to ground you, to help bring you into balance. And now I would invite you to allow your attention to move up into your head, into your mind. into the place where we often are throughout the day, our mind thinking about things. What do I need to do next? And instead of staying here in the mind, I would invite you to drop your attention out of your mind and down into your heart space in the center of your chest. Allow your focus to move into that heart space. And as you move into that heart space, as your consciousness drops into your heart space, you touch the divine. This is where the divine dwells. This is your divine self that leads with love, that knows everything that needs to be done, that knows the answers to all the questions. Right here in this heart space, in communion with the divine. And if you have a question of your own that you'd like an answer to, take a moment now and just think of that question and hold it in that heart space. And as you hold that question, allow the divine that is within you to bring you an answer. It may be a word or words. It may be a picture, or it may be a feeling or a concept, an emotion. Whatever it is, allow it to happen. Allow it to be there. You don't need to understand it right in this moment. Just allow the answer to come. And if you haven't received an answer yet, make yourself receive one now, even if it feels like you're making it up, because you're in your heart space and it knows the answer. So now allow yourself to hold on to that answer, to tuck it away into your mind space, but to continue to be present in your heart, in the divine. Be the container for the divine energy. Be the vessel. Be the chalice. And offer that divine energy throughout your day, in whatever you're doing, and in whomever you are speaking with or interacting with. Know that the divine is always there. And so now take another moment to breathe, to let out a breath, to bring yourself back to this time and this place, still in that divine energy, but now in the world once again. And when you feel ready, you can open your eyes, wide awake and relaxed, wide awake and at peace.